Great stuff. Cheers, Zach. So the Miata Trophy is heading out onto circuit. They're just forming up on the grid ahead of their green flag warming up lap. We've already seen one race from them earlier on today, and it was a fabulous race to watch indeed. Of course, we saw John Langridge take the win this morning ahead of Dylan Stepney, who finished in second place. They form up in the order in which they finished. And looking down the order, drivers to watch who will get involved. We saw a fabulous start from John Langridge in race 1 for the Miata Trophy, so if he can work that again, hopefully we'll be on for another good race. Dylan Stepney was fighting away as well. There's more to come, I would say, from Rowan Lundy. Rowan Lundy fighting away so hard, not only with David Chapman, but with Declan Lee, with Nicholas Stott. And we saw a good battle between Alex Miller and Drew Fletcher, who the pair of them closed in on Dylan Stepney in the very latter stages of the race. So lots to look forward to, lots more racing to unfold over the next, what will be 20 minutes of racing for the Miata Trophy, before we then go back to Porsche Club Championship action for another 25-minute race. Then it is Clio Cup GB before we go back Porsche racing for the final time this weekend. That's for the Boxster Cup, the cars we've just seen out. They retake to the circuit again for another 25-minute race before they can pack up and go home. We then nip into what is quite a late lunch break, because we've got the Enduro KA 24-hour getting underway at around about 20 to 5, so please do make sure you stick around for that one, because that will be a race to watch. There's plenty of it, 24 hours of racing to look forward to. There's just a bit of on-track clearing up to do. Mike Kurtler's car from the previous race just being taken back to the paddock area, albeit with a slight puncture on the front of that car. It looks like the Pirelli tyre has parted ways with the rim on that car. Just nipping out of the way as well is Raymond Worley, seeing that the recovery effort is ongoing, so just nipped the car forward to allow as much room as possible for the CNC recovery unit to get that car out of the way. The 1 minute board, I think, has been held aloft. We're just waiting for the 30 seconds and then we can get this race underway. So we're just ticking our way past 5 minutes past 1 in the afternoon, and we are still quite a way ahead of schedule, I would say, as well. This race due to get underway in what would be 25 minutes time, so still nicely ahead of schedule indeed. Engines are running, green flag is waved, and it will be John Langridge that leads the field away onto their green flag warming up lap. The second and final race of the weekend for the Miata Trophy. We'll run you through the way in which they line up. Car number 5, race 1 winner, lines up on pole position. He's got Dylan Stepney, the Dayglow yellow car. Car number 33 lining up alongside Alex Miller and Drew Fletcher make up row 2. Car 7 and car number 26. Keep an eye on Alex Miller and Drew Fletcher returning to their battle which they left in race 1. And of course Dylan Stepney is well and truly there as well. Declan Lee and Nicholas Stott are on row 3, car 1 and car 4. Of course, the pair of those two battling away till the very end. And then it is Rowan Lundy starting in 7th. He's got David Chapman for company starting in 8th. Car 88 and car 19. Again, another pair fighting away. Simon Fleet, if he can keep tabs on those cars up the road, keep an eye on that number 55 machine. He's got Raymond Worley alongside, lining up in 10th place. And then it is Jack Hargraves and Jude Worley lining up on the 6th order grid, car 66 and car 20. So battles to watch. Anybody inside that top 9 was fighting away in race 1, but Jack Hargraves and Raymond Worley towards the latter stages of the race, they start 10th and 11th. They were fighting away until the very end as well. But for me, if John Langridge, Zach, can nail that start, he puts himself in the best position to win race number 2. But this time, Alex Miller, he's not starting a couple of rows back, he's starting directly behind him.
Yeah, exactly, and that's going to be really important, of course, for Alex Miller to just get that good start, really, more than anything. Of course, it was really close, that three-way fight between Stepney, Miller and Drew Fletcher for the best part of half of race 1 for the Miata Trophy. Miller now just needs a punchy start, clear Dylan Stepney, and then start to apply that pressure, because John Langridge in race 1, he was head and shoulders above the rest. He set that benchmark, and someone needs to rise to that occasion. Granted, it wasn't helped by the battling behind. That really didn't help them close that gap, but it all starts from the first lap.
Yeah, absolutely so. So let's see what they can do over the next, what will be 20 minutes of racing action. The cars just working their way onto the grid, all forming up into their relative positions. All the cars are here. We wait for the green flag at the tail end of the order, which has been waved. Then it will be the 5-second board held aloft now. and we keep an eye on the red lights. The red lights go on in just a few moments' time. They go on now. Who will get the best of the start? Will it be John Langridge? Will it be Dylan Stepney? It is John Langridge away who gets a good start. So too does Alex Miller as everyone screams away from the line. Alex Miller looks to the inside of Dylan Stepney. The door slams shut in his face as Dylan Stepney desperately holds on to what is second place. We're almost 3 wide in the background of cars trying to dive their way in towards turn 3, so it will be John Langridge ahead of Dylan Stepney and then Alex Miller. Alex Miller has got Declan Lee. He's had a rapid start and has already dethroned that being the car of Drew Fletcher, and he's now trying to fight his way into the podium places side by side on the running towards Church Corner. The very quick right-hander Declan Lee up into 3rd place now. Declan Lee not pulling punches, running all over the grass and the gravel, or running all over the grass slightly was Alex Miller, but an even bigger moment for Rowan Lundy. I said keep an eye on him. Unfortunately, he's already starting on the back foot, but on the run up towards Rocket Inn, it will be John Langridge leading from Dylan Stepney. Then it's Declan Lee, Drew Fletcher and Alex Miller, and Nicholas Stott effectively sort of ends that lead pack.
Yeah, it does indeed, but of course the important thing is that of course the race leader of Langridge hasn't been able to get away. That gap back to of course the 33 of Stepney is still very, very close indeed. It's the important thing of course for Stepney to start applying pressure, because if anything has been shown from race 1 is that you do not want to let that number 5 machine get away. As soon as he's got a gap, as soon as he feels safe, those laps are going to start churning in more and more. They've also got to be really careful as well not to battle too much. I know Declan Lee had an absolute rocket ship of a start, indeed continues to do so. Track limits at the final corner, running way too wide, pushing incredibly hard as we saw over the duration of race 1, but he needs to really use that pace to fight forwards.
Yeah, Rowan Lundy immediately trying to fight back as well. He's side by side with David Chapman on the running towards turn 3. Rowan Lundy on the outside, Declan Chapman or David Chapman on the inside. They almost come together, slightly sideways on the exit is Rowan Lundy. He's pushing so hard, trying to minimise the damage from that mistake in the very early stages of the race, all the way around the outside on the way to Church Corner. Brilliant move from Rowan Lundy, and now we're potentially seeing a move for second place because Dylan Stepney is left vulnerable to Declan Lee. Declan Lee dives to what is the inside, the outside, tries the inside once again on the run up towards Rocket Inn. Who's going to be later on the brakes? Declan Lee is the tighter line, a slight lock up from one of them, but brilliant move from Declan Lee up into second place. The next target for him, race leader John Langridge. So now it is Dylan Stepney's turn to either attack or defend. He can't really afford to defend too hard because he'll lose time to the cars up the road. He can't afford to attack too hard because he'll lose time to the cars behind him. So he's in a tricky spot now. He's Dylan Stepney. He's got Drew Fletcher and Alex Miller behind him, and Nicholas Stott. Don't lose him out either.
I think the important thing for Stepney is going to be to not really attack Declan Lee. The number 1 machine has got some remarkable pace. He's taken each car as a stepping stone to the next and has really hit the ground running. Struggled a little bit in race 1, but I think that's because he fell back and then got caught up in little skirmishes, which cost him more and more time. Stepney knows that and knows that Declan Lee will be aggressive. Lee, though, is going to be charging forward towards Langridge. I have absolutely no doubt about that. And I think for Stepney, if he can sit in the slipstream and use Lee to close in that gap, he could well be fighting for a race lead. And I think we could have a 3-horse fight at the front. But that all depends on if/when Declan Lee can close the gap.
Yeah, absolutely. So we are starting to see some weather change as well, and potentially some weather that might just miss us, but then again wind can change and we may start to see some slightly different weather conditions here at Anglesey throughout the day. But up the hill goes John Langridge. He's still got Declan Lee giving chase. Dylan Stepney has fallen away, not quite into the clutches of Drew Fletcher. Alex Miller is there, Nicholas Stott, and the big pressure from Simon Fleet. That's the battle for 6th place at the moment, but Nicholas Stott starting to feel a bit more pressure from that car behind. They do, the pair of them do have Rowan Lundy still chasing them down, so it's what, 5 cars all fighting over the lead, and then it's what, 3 cars all fighting over everything else thereafter.
Brilliant race, I've got to be honest. I mean, I didn't really know what else we expected from the Miata Trophy. Fantastic racing, of course, for these guys. It's so close and competitive. Looking at the gap at the front, from the 5 to the 1, of course, of John Langridge and Declan Lee, the gap is less than a second. Quickest lap that time by for Declan Lee, a 1:21.52, was 5 thousandths of a second quicker than Langridge, so they are virtually matched on pace, but the quickest race overall does go the way of the number 1, which is a 1:20.000, and that pace is staggeringly quick. And if he's able to keep this momentum up and slowly but surely chip away at Langridge, I think it's going to be a much more difficult race for that number 5 than what he had in race 1.
Yeah, absolutely so. So as we look around the circuit, what battles do we have starting to develop yet more? Declan Lee is getting closer to John Langridge. Dylan Stepney is still there or thereabouts with Drew Fletcher. Alex Miller is just keeping tabs with those cars up the road. Nicholas Stott is still fighting away with Simon Fleet. Simon Fleet, in turn, does have a very rapid Rowan Lundy all of a sudden arriving on the scene. But Dylan Stepney, for the moment, the man we're watching, up towards Peel. Drew Fletcher still there or thereabouts, and Alex Miller isn't too far away at all. But with those three starting to get involved in their own little battle, that's allowing Declan Lee, who's up 3 places from where he started, start to pressure John Langridge for the lead of the race.
Yeah, exactly. Of course, it has seen that Dylan Stepney has fallen back ever so slightly, which could allow the top 2 to have a bit of a free rein in terms of their battle. But with how important momentum is in these MX-5s, particularly at Anglesey with such a high tolerance on straight line speed, one small battle can very quickly lose you sort of at least half a second a lap if you're not careful. All depends on, obviously, on how hard you are battling together, but that is something that Langridge and Lee are going to have to be mindful of, is that yes, they've got a gap, and yes, they are by far the 2 quickest cars on track. If they begin to battle, the results might not show that.
Yeah, so there's still plenty of racing to unfold over the next 14 minutes, and Simon Fleet will see that Rowan Lundy is getting bigger and bigger in that rear-view mirror. John Langridge will see the same by way of Declan Lee getting closer. Dylan Stepney is doing everything he needs to do to manage that gap back to Drew Fletcher. The pair of them are starting to drop Alex Miller, I would say, a slight bit. Nicholas Stott is leaving a bit more on the table than I think he would like. So too is John Langridge. Big old moments on the exit of Rocket in. Too eager to jump on the throttle. That's stepped the rear of the car out. That's allowed Declan Lee to close in ever more. Declan Lee already with the fastest lap of the race. Improved it last time through with a 1 minute 19.917. By far and away the fastest car out there on circuit. And he's really starting to disturb John Langridge's lead. It's going to be a long 13.5 minutes of this race remaining for John Langridge. That will be a lot of defending that he has to do, and he'll be hoping that Declan Lee makes a small mistake. That car looking much fresher than it did at the end of race number 1, of course, with that big old moment that he had running through the external section of the circuit, running all the way through the grass. That car's running back on song, and he's not letting that hamper his progress for the rest of this race. But Declan Lee really starting to apply that pressure on John Langridge for the race lead.
Of course, both of them are direct rivals for that championship. I think Langridge was just able to tip that 6-point margin coming in to Anglesey in race 1, thanks to a P1 and a P5 respectively for the 2. But Declan Lee is immediately on the response, and if he can win here, that's going to be some great points gain. Look at the gap, a good run out of turn 4 at Church, and look at the gap closing and closing as they rise up the hill towards, of course, Rocket in. Defensive goes the number 5 machine. Outside line, of course, for the number 1 of Declan Lee. Bit of a lock-up as well on the inside for the race leader. The up and under could be there, but a bit of contact between the pair.
Yeah, so Declan Lee really starting to apply that pressure, letting John Langridge know that he wants that race lead. The pair of them equally drawn level on the exit of Rocket out in towards Peel, absolutely nose to tail. And yes, again, just I think a slight tap there front to rear between Declan Lee and John Langridge. Dylan Stepney will be watching that happen up the road and hoping that he can draw himself in on that little battle and minimise any time loss that he has between himself, Drew Fletcher and Alex Miller, who Alex Miller I think has fallen away ever more. Yes, he has. Alex Miller has really fallen away from those cars up the road. So it's 2 for the race lead, 2 for the final step on the podium. Alex Miller, Nicholas Stott, Rowan Lundy, followed then by Simon Fleet and David Chapman, all absolutely together. Great to watch, and slowly starting to work his way into that battle is Jack Hargraves. But at the moment, the battle we need to watch is the one we're watching head through turn 3 now. That is Declan Lee all over the coattails of car number 5, John Langridge, race leader. Still
got over half of the race left to go as well, so let's bring this on between these two. Hopefully it's nice, clean and respectful racing, but hard at that, and I think it is going to be telling of the race to come. The gap is closing. The run out of Church is so much better for Lee as he looks to the inside before they even get to the King. Close to contact between the pair of them as he gives him the squeeze to the inside. Declan Lee now going for the race lead. Langridge, of course, is there on the inside, but gets the nose, of course, across, and Declan Lee goes over the grass, missiles into the apex of Rocket out. Still there side by side as they approach the ascent towards the top.
Yeah, John Langridge, he's going to be on the outside now, the unfavoured line. Declan Lee on the inside, later on the brakes, grabs the apex into the race lead. Does John Langridge look for the cutback on the exit? Yes, he does. He draws himself almost level, still a bit of an overlap, but he'll be fighting a losing battle down in towards the corkscrew, and Declan Lee into the lead of the race, maybe a bit more argy-bargy than he would have liked. But nonetheless, that is the lead of the Miata Trophy Race 2 here at Anglesey. Declan Lee will now focus on extending that margin over John Langridge. Dylan Stepney will have hoped that lasted a bit longer because he may now have to focus on defending that final step on the podium from Drew Fletcher. Alex Miller has fallen away. Nicholas Stott has pulled away from Rowan Lundy. Then it is Simon Fleet and David Chapman starting to battle away. They keep an eye on Jack Hargraves. He's up a place from where he started and he wants to close in on those cars up the road.
It definitely does, and of course with all the battling that's going on, could definitely be possible. We are ticking down towards half the race completed, just 10 minutes and 4 seconds left on the clock. You see in there the fight for the lead. The number 1 championship leader, Declan Lee, closely followed by race 1 winner, John Langridge. Of course, it's this time that the number 5 gets the run up the hill towards Rocket Inn. Which way is the number 5 going to go? Which way is the number 1 going to defend? Does he even need to? Parks it in the middle, all the way to the left-hand side. Langridge is not going to back down from this at all, but the gap closes at the apex.
Yeah, Declan Lee so eager to get on the throttle as well. Sideways on the exit of Rocket Inn, sideways through the apex of Rocket Out as well. Declan Lee pushing so hard, doing what he can to extend that margin. You could see there just a very quick flash of brake lights on the run up towards Peel, making sure the pads are back seated where they need to be, just to prevent any sort of pad knock or anything like that. Insert some temperature, making sure that everything on that car is running as optimal as possible to extend that margin over John Langridge. Dylan Stepney is still there or thereabouts in 3rd place. So too is Drew Fletcher as well. Drew Fletcher will just be the thorn in the side. The pair of them closing down that sparring duo in the lead of the race. Alex Miller isn't too far away in 5th place. Nicholas Stott is controlling the gap back to Rowan Lundy in 6th and 7th place. And then it's everybody else thereafter. David Chapman and Jack Hargraves. Simon Fleet is still there in 8th place as well. But Declan Lee, now he's got to the front. You can visually tell the body language of that car. He's focusing on running away.
Yeah, he is. He does not want to be focusing in his rearview mirrors and just put in the lap time, get as far away as possible as he can on Langridge, which, in fairness to the number 5, has done a brilliant job of trying to compete. But in the end, I think that failed attempt last time by definitely didn't help him, and that was probably his one and only chance. Oh my goodness me, is that more issues
That's
for the 88 of Rowan Lundy? Yeah, same mistake as earlier on.
Yeah, and that's cost him a couple of places and a lot of time as well, because Rowan Lundy was on the tail of Nicholas Stott and doing what he can just to close in on that car up the road. Unfortunately, that small mistake has cost him not only 1 place but 2. So Simon Fleet and David Chapman have got through, and he's got a lot more time to make up. John Langridge having lost the lead of the race to Declan Lee. We now have a very quick Dylan Stepney starting to fight his way onto the coattails of that car. So we may see another battle reignite from race 1. Of course, we saw John Langridge and Dylan Stepney fighting away at the start. John Langridge started to pull away and continued to do so right the way up until the checkered flag. This time, Dylan Stepney, he's had a second wind. He's pulled away massively from Drew Fletcher and really closed in on John Langridge. Alex Miller will be watching everything happen up the road and will want to close down on that little battle. Rowan Lundy, having crossed the line previously in 7th place, drops to 9th, but will now be pretty much a man possessed, trying to close in not only on David Chapman but also on Simon Fleet and try and get back onto the coattails of Nicholas Stott. But with 7 7.25 minutes remaining, he's running out of time, isn't he?
Yeah, time definitely is of the essence. Probably going to get 6 laps maybe at the line if they're lucky. Again, all depends on the pace that Declan Lee has and the timing relative to the clock effectively. But yeah, we're into the second half of the race, well into the second half of the race, and that clock is not going to be slowing down by any means. So if you see an opportunity, it's better to take it than to wait for it, because you don't actually know, you don't ever know when your next opportunity might be.
Yeah, absolutely. So as we look, Nicholas Stott nails the curb through Rocket Inn. He's very shortly followed by Simon Fleet. David Chapman is there or thereabouts, but just isn't quite close enough to force the move yet. He's just on the tail of those cars up the road. Rowan Lundy really isn't too far away. Jumping out of the way is Jude Worley. She's trying to stay out of the way as best as possible from the cars picking their way through. Declan Lee over the line from John Langridge, and the gap has come down between our top 2, potentially with a bit of traffic playing a part. Dylan Stepney still there in 3rd place, 1.4 seconds away now from John Langridge, followed then by the number 26 machine, that is Drew Fletcher, followed by Alex Miller and Nicholas Stott. But for the moment, the race has somewhat found its point, and everyone's trying to settle into their positions but not get too comfortable.
Don't speak too soon, because sometimes it is just a very short fuse that just needs a bit of a spark. That could well be a mistake from Declan Lee. We've seen how aggressive he can be a couple of times off the circuit so far today. That definitely isn't something he's immune to, and with John Langridge not a million miles away behind either, could well see him maybe go for a late effort for the race lead. Also Dylan Stepney, don't forget as well. The close battles all the way through the field, it must be said. Of course, Chapman closing in on to Fleet and Stott just ahead. Fletcher as well, potentially. I mean, in fairness, actually is sort of stuck in a bit of a no man's land, but is definitely going to be looking over his shoulder at some cars chasing him down, because that is a very long train. But again, as we've touched on, the problem is that 5-minute countdown on the clock.
Yeah, coming out of this morning, John Langridge had taken the championship lead away from Declan Lee, but if everything were to finish as it is, the pair of them would be so close in the championship. We dread to think what the rest of the season would look like. It's also a shame not to see Kevin Sylvain out. Of course, we saw mechanical issues for that car this morning, the only Mark IV that we've got out there. Potentially slightly less developed than the Mark IIIs out there, and unfortunately that retirement was rather terminal, and he's not joined us for this race either.
Yeah, that is a shame. Of course, that's essentially day done for him, because this is the second and final race for the Miata Trophy. Of course, they did have qualifying and things like that, but it is a shame, especially because Anglesey is such a fun circuit, real driver's favourite. Was talking to Wayne Gregory, who's just won the Boxster Cup, and he was absolutely shattered after a race here at Anglesey. So it is a case of that. Also very close for the fight. That's the number 7 machine, of course, trying to find their way through. Of course, Miller on Fletcher, inside line, defensive goes the car ahead. No way through at the moment for Alex Miller.
No, Drew Fletcher is now on the inside of Rocket Out. Alex Miller potentially looking for the cutback. Does he have a look on the exit? Yes, he does. Can he get the car alongside on the run up towards Peel? Potentially so. Alex Miller, no. Dab of the brakes, ducks back in behind the car of Drew Fletcher. So 3 Peel, they go absolutely together. This is the battle for 4th place. And Alex Miller, he's been very quick throughout the season and has had moments of just being pretty much unbeatable, but then coming into this weekend, momentum potentially not with him as much as he would have liked, but he is starting to turn up the wick now as we tick past 3 minutes and 30 seconds remaining. Alex Miller's continuing to apply that pressure onto Drew Fletcher. A slight lock-up further back, and that will be involved in the battle between Nicholas Stott, that being the 55 then of Simon Fleet, David Chapman and Rowan Lundy, who are all tied together. That battle is for 6th, 7th, 8th and 9th respectively. Declan Lee in the lead of the race hasn't exactly pulled away massively from John Langridge, so any mistake will potentially cost him that lead. We've then got the number 33 car of Dylan Stepney, who's giving chase in the Dayglow yellow car, and Drew Fletcher, the rest of this race is going to be a busy one, defending from Alex Miller.
Yeah, I think so. 3 minutes left, so it's not like he's got a lot of time to have to do it, which is obviously going to be great news for him. But I suppose that also ramps up the pressure and maybe makes Alex Miller more likely to go for some efforts that Fletcher is going to have to maybe thwart. 2 minutes 47 on the clock. I think we might just be able to stretch three laps to go at the line. It will be quite close, I'd imagine. Again, it all depends on what Declan Lee is doing out in front. Dean Stepney as well. To be fair, not too far in front of that fight for P4 in terms of the podium, but I think just quite a little bit out of reach for those two. But Stepney's been really up and down in terms of pace so far this race.
Yeah, he has indeed. On to the penultimate lap of the race goes Declan Lee. John Langridge quicker on the lap prior by almost half a second, so it's by over half a second, pardon me, so it's really closed down on to Declan Lee as John Langridge. Dylan Stepney still there in 3rd place. Nicholas Stott will feel the pressure from Simon Fleet, David Chapman and the recovering Rowan Lundy, who's had 2 very big moments throughout this race. Jack Hargraves running around in a fairly quiet race, but still on the edge of the top 10, doing what he can to pick up the points where he can. Declan Lee in the lead of the race. Has he lost more time to John Langridge? Well, I think he had on the run into Church, on the way out of Church. That time that John Langridge has gained has all evaporated with that small mistake. However, the battle we have mentioned as well, Drew Fletcher and Alex Miller, that's not extinguished at all.
No, it really hasn't. I'm really looking forward to seeing how potentially it reaches its climax. Drew Fletcher parking it in the middle of the circuit, very, I don't know, defending thin air more than anything. It all depends on how late Miller was going to be on the brakes, but did definitely seem to be quite conservative. But parking it in the middle, you don't leave yourself vulnerable all the way on the inside as to make that next corner too tight. You don't leave the door open on the inside to be, dive bombed on the inside. So really strategic and clever driving, that must be said, from Drew Fletcher. It's P4 at the end of the day. It's a place inside the top 5 and just off the podium. It's a really good position to be in as we head on to the final lap.
Yeah, absolutely. So Declan Lee over the line onto that final lap of the race, still being hunted down by John Langridge. Then we've got Dylan Stepney and Drew Fletcher still sparring away with Alex Miller. It's going to be great to chat to hopefully the top 3. If we can't find all of them, I've got to have a chat with Drew Fletcher.
Yeah, I think so. He's absolutely having a sensational race. So Jack Royal is going to run down, hopefully, at the end of this race, find some of our top 3 drivers, because what a race this has been for race 2 of the Miata Trophy. Of of course, marking another stage in their season where they'll travel to those circuits. They've done Silverstone, National, Brands Hatch and Donington Park thus far this season. They've still got Snetterton, Cadwell, Alton and Brands Indy still to come to round off their season in October. And well, if you're ever at any of those circuits on those weekends, this is definitely going to be a championship to watch. Drew Fletcher versus Alex Miller, of course, the 26 versus the number 7 machine. This time the inside is left open. Potentially that could open the door. Just having a look, not quite enough. So I think Drew Fletcher might be able to hang on to P4, because this is the final lap. That descent doesn't really open the door for many opportunities, although Alex Miller, he's definitely not got the memo in terms of that regard, because he is all over the rear end of the 26. Will of course have to catch our race winner across the line. They're running their way downhill towards the corkscrew, the number 1 leading the number 5, the 2 championship rivals, it must be said, out of the final corner of turn 15. The number 1 keeps it nice and clean, up 4 positions from a P5 starting place, beeps the horn, takes the checker flag, and Declan Lee takes victory for race 2 here at Anglesey. Closely followed, of course, by John Langridge, who has absolutely smashed it. Unfortunately, couldn't convert P1 from race 1 into P1 in race 2. Dylan Stepney as well, P3. What a sensational result to round off the podium. Just, again, a quiet race. Didn't really sort of set any timing sheets alight, just did enough in order to solidify that 3rd place. Drew Fletcher, of course, very hard fought there in P4, as we'll run you through the entirety of the race results in just a moment. But that top 3 battle was absolutely sensational. Of course, there you can see our race winner, Declan Lee. 15 laps in the end, and took the fast lap of a 1:19.917, and a good response on what was a tough race of race 1, falling back, climbing forward, falling back again, and then climbing his way back to the top here for race number 2. And limiting the damage in terms of the championship, him and John Langridge, his closest rival, they're not going to be separated by too much at all, let's put it that way, going into the next round when they head to Snetterton in a few weeks' time. Let's have a look then as to how things racked up after 20 minutes of racing action for the Miata Trophy. It was, of course, Declan Lee, John Langridge and Dylan Stepney, the podium. Of course, the top 3 separated by less than 6 seconds. Drew Fletcher from Alex Miller, that's the top 5. Nicholas Stott is P6, ahead of Simon Fleet in what was a fairly troublesome battle for the pair of them there. David Chapman from Rowan Lundy, who did suffer from a couple of mistakes off the exit of Church. He rounds out in P9 with Jack Hargraves, the top 10. Raymond Worley and Jude Worley, 11th and 12th, rounding off our finishers for race number 2 of the Miata Trophy. Jack Worrell is going to be down there, hopefully to have a chat with some of the drivers when they peel their way into the pit lane. But don't go anywhere if you're tuning in on the live stream. Of course, we've got plenty more racing action to come. We've just concluded the final race for the Miata Trophy. We'll move our way into the Porsche Club Championship Clio Cup, which had a fantastic race number 1 a little bit earlier on. Boxster Cup before lunch break, and then we go to 24 hours of the Enduro KA Anglesey. Jack Rowell is down there though, and hopefully he can have a chat with some of our drivers.
Is down here in the Parc Ferme area, over the moon, clearly with that win. He worked hard for it. We'll have to jump down. He's just spotted the slight bit of damage on the front of that car. So, Declan, talk us through that win. That must have been hard work.
It was hard work. I've got to drive as environmentally and friendly as possible because I had no fuel. The fuel gauge was going down and down and down. I saw John in the mirror and thought, right, I've got to drive efficiently now. Let's try and save the environment, put it in 4th a bit earlier, and then try and maintain that gap. I'm really, really happy. I couldn't thank Hills Motorsport more for getting me to the front.
And some active weight reduction on the front of your car. Talk us through that.
I haven't seen it yet. Let's have a look together. It's fine. It just needs a... I'm not entirely sure. I did meet an Anglesey corner marker in the last race, so apologies, Anglesey circuit, for that. But maybe it's something to do with that. I don't know. Maybe I'm just quick.
Too quick for the car. Thank you, Declan. Congratulations. And I'm sure he'll be very happy on the drive home. We do have John Langridge here again in typical John Langridge fashion, messing around with the camera until we get our way over to him. So, John, I mean, talk us through that one, because that's another podium, another good haul of points. You and Declan, you're insanely close in the championship now.
Yeah, if you told me at the start of the day I'd come home with the 1st and the 2nd and a good gain in the championship, I'd definitely taken that. I knew Declan had put new tyres on for that race, and there's such a big gain of new tyres around here, so he did the business, and yeah, we go home pretty happy.
And in terms of the rest of the season, you know that Declan is incredibly quick and you two are very closely matched. You've got Dylan, who's come on a lot throughout this season, and Alex Miller. I think yet more to come from him. Do you always look over your shoulder, or do you always think races out the windscreen, focus on that?
There's definitely strength in depth in this championship. I think the way some of these young drivers are coming through is brilliant, and obviously Alex is pedalling all right as well. So looking forward to some close racing in the future, second half of the season.
Amazing, we'll look forward to it. Thank you so much, John. We will also grab Dylan Stepney as well. Dylan, the second time I'm speaking to you today, that can only mean one good thing, right? That's another podium, good haul of points.
Yeah, definitely. We're going the right way, which is good. Very enjoyable. Love the track. Good battles with everyone in the group. So no, it was good. It's good. Just couldn't stay with Deck with new tyres, and just couldn't keep on the back of John. But tried to keep Drew and Alex Miller behind me, which was the aim. So yeah, it was good. It was a good laugh.
Amazing. Well, congratulations. We'll look forward to seeing more of you throughout this season. But that's everybody down here. So back up to Zach in the commentary box.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, the Porsche Club of Great Britain, of course, brought to you by Pirelli, and of course the AM Championship brought to you by Pirelli as well, is about to get itself underway. We saw a fantastic race one that saw a three-way fight right at the front, with Bill Cayley, Simon Clark and Jake McAleer taking to the top three spots. It's myself, Zach Sweeney, Paul Yerd, to talk you through the next 25 minutes of racing action. And Paul, off the back of race number one, I think we're in for an absolute barnstorming race.
Very, very much so, to be quite honest. It was an absolute